Welcome to the Elevation Grant Share Out. So for many months, we have recipients that have been working on their projects, and today we're going to celebrate their project and hear about it. Before we get there, the Elevation Grant was all about giving creatives of color who haven't historically had access the ability to go out and create a beautiful project, and especially for those who want to work as adventurers, as creatives of color, as filmmakers, as photographers in the outdoor industry. So one of the incredible recipients is Janelle Paciencia. Janelle is not only a climber, she's an amazing creative. And without further ado, I'd love for her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janelle Paciencia, and I live in the Pacific Northwest. Before applying to this Elevation Grant, I worked as a social worker for many years, and I climbed, I hiked, I am an advocate for the outdoors. And so applying for this grant was such a huge opportunity for me to just bring together all my experiences and skills. And so I'm really excited and happy to share what I've been able to create within the during the grant period. So we're about to go through it and enjoy.
Janelle, tell me how you got interested in being an outdoor photographer.
I'm glad you asked. I feel that I've always had a love and interest for photography. It just wasn't until later in life that I was able to marry this interest in photography with what I like to do, which is be outdoors. And so through my community and the outdoor climbing community, I was able to find mentors such as Nikki Smith and Irene Yee, who were able to assist me in learning the proper techniques to safely go outside and take these amazing photos that, translate to what you'll be able to see today during my project.
Did you find photography first, or were you more invested in the outdoors first? Like sometimes people start one or the other. How did that come for you?
Yeah, I definitely developed an interest for photography first. Back in high school, I was able to take what they call an old school darkroom type photography class with the point and shoot. I just wasn't able to really dive into that hobby until later in life. I really didn't become an outdoorsy person, quote unquote, until also later in life, due to access reasons as well. And so once I was able to find myself in really beautiful surroundings, living in Colorado, hiking on the Continental Divide Trail or just being at the national park or the local park, I was really taken back by how I would always come back home and be like, wow, I wish I had a better photo than what's on my phone. And so kind of the wheels started turning from there, and I decided to invest in myself, in that hobby. And that's how my love of outdoor photography started.
So ice climbing typically hasn't been associated with folks of color, but I see that's a barrier that you're really trying to break down. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you got into it?
Yeah, so I have been a rock climber for quite some time now, and I have been seeing a lot of my friends, my Black and Indigenous and other folks of color friends in rock climbing make that transition to ice. And for myself, I decided to finally take the leap with the help of the community that I've been able to grow into. And just seeing all the beautiful faces that are taking up space in ice really led me to feel the necessity to apply for this grant so that I can showcase and champion all these wonderful folks who are coming up in the sport.
Amazing. So you've had like ice mentors?
Yes, I've had quite a few. I've been lucky enough to have quite a few mentors. A lot of my friends are very well versed in rock climbing and just made the transition to ice. And then I have some friends who've been ice climbing forever and even have written guidebooks. And so I've been able to lean on them for knowledge and also just that kind of encouragement that one needs when you don't see a lot of people like you in the sport.
take us through how you got started with your project. I know it's been like a really long project period and things have evolved. And so feel free to take us through how you got started and how you selected where you went and who you photographed.
Yeah, so when I originally submitted my proposal for this project, I had these really huge ideas, and they're still out there that I want to pursue a lot of aspects of this really bigger concept. But due to the nature of the times with COVID, I really had to be super tight with my vision and what I was going to go after this season, especially since it's not been the most wintry of winter seasons as well, on top of COVID. So for this project period, I've been able to go out to Utah as well as Minnesota and ice climb and photograph some friends and mentors that I have out there. And that's what I'll be able to walk you through in these photos.
So tell me about your first trip experience in Minnesota and like why there?
Sure. So the reason I went out to Minnesota was because the power of social media led me to find some friends out there, Latinas, who are out there ice climbing. And one of them is named also Janelle, and the other one is named Karina. And they were just super stoked to have another person that could join them this ice season. I'm a newbie to ice climbing, and they're just so knowledgeable, and they're just so hardcore. Like, it was negative 30 degrees and they were just having fun, and it was great. And it really inspired me to be a little tougher, but also like, wow, like if they can do it, I can do it. And they really took their time to not only mentor me during the trip, but like provide me the tools that I feel that I would need to move forward and keep finding other folks in unlikely places who are doing these amazing sport, and just connecting with them. So I'm really glad that I went out to Minnesota, even though I'll be honest, at the time I couldn't believe I was going out to Minnesota, because just as a brown person, I never thought I'd end up in Minnesota.
Amazing. Okay. So you're finding community, you're highlighting people that haven't historically been highlighted in a place that I think may still be off the radar. So those are really fantastic. Like, and then looking at some of the images, like I love to talk about a few of them. And so they're like so fantastic. And if there's any particular like you want to speak to.
Yeah, so the first photo I'd like to speak on is this image of Janelle. And I just kind of want to also hype her up. She is a apprentice rock guide, I believe is the term. She's like going for her International Federation of Mountain Guides Association, like certification. Like, she's mentoring BIPOC folks all the time on her free time, and she's a teacher, just like professionally. And so for her to be captured in this moment where she was talking to me about the systems, and she herself is going to wrap down onto the wild ice that is not, you're not able to see it, but you can see that she's kind of slowly going downhill. And, you know, in the background, we have the frozen park and the frozen lake. That's actually Lake Superior. Oh my goodness, I should probably look at a map. But it's one of the Great Lakes in the background that you see there. And I just really love this moment of her being in her element.
Amazing. Okay. I really love that. And thanks so much for sharing more about Janelle. I think that's incredible. So the next one, like me as also a photographer, this is one of my favorites from the set. It's beautiful from the lighting to seeing the formations. I'm curious how you were able to get this shot.
Yes, with the help of Janelle and Karina, we were able to set up a static line right next to the top rope setup that they had for this climb. And I was able to just hang out there safely, waiting for Karina to come up. She's a pretty quick climber. And so I did get some photos of her going up, but I really wanted to insert this photo because it's one of her coming down. She's really happy that she was able to successfully climb up the pillar. I love the color of the blue on her glasses. And I do really enjoy the fact that you can see the top rope. A lot of folks think that because this is a pretty advanced sport, you always have to be hardcore about it. But for us, this was just a day of fun, and top roping ice is super fun and enjoyable. And that's something that I want to help normalize and hope folks can see themselves if something like this is put out there.
Okay, I love that, Janelle. Thank you for sharing. I think one of the things about climbing is that people don't realize with a static line, it's not as easy as you think. And so that's one of the reasons, because you're just kind of up there waiting. And so there's this relationship you have to develop between you and the climber. And so as we get into the next photo, I'd be curious to hear more about your experience with the static line. And because I think people may not know.
Yeah, so being up there is difficult, you're right, especially when you have so many layers on and the harness is pinching, like really digging into you. Your circulation is kind of cutting off.
Exactly.
And so I'm doing everything that I can to kind of stretch out my legs, but at the same time, not kick the ice too hard so it doesn't fall into my climbers. There's a lot of factors going into all the safety things that are going on in just like this one thing. So yeah, it can get difficult, and also you get pretty chilly if you're not moving. Fortunate for me, we were directly in the sun. So at least I wasn't blue, even though it was negative 30 degrees this day, but there was some sun, which was helpful, and just trying to figure out, some stretches that work out so that I can kind of not be too fatigued by the time the climber actually gets up to where I am. Another aspect that I don't feel a lot of people realize is that, you got to wait quite a while for people to get up, regardless if they're lead climbing or top roping. It takes a minute for some folks to get up. So you're waiting all that time. And yeah.
I think it's important to say, because as a climbing photographer, people don't realize the level of difficulty and the amount of variables, and then adding ice adds all these additional variables, including like heavier gloves, taking your hand in and out, and like just staying ready for the moment and being engaged. And so I just wanted to I hear more about your experience with it, because it's so badass, and I think it's amazing to hear, because you don't really see us as ice photographers, and I think that's so much. I think that really adds to the power and the beauty of the project, of your project.
Thank you so much, Elle. I appreciate that, because yeah, I mean, not only am I like kind of tired and in a position where I could potentially hurt my friends if I make the wrong move or kick off some ice or something, but also, as I'm sure you're very well aware, the equipment we have up with us is super fragile as well to the elements. And actually during this trip, I broke a lens because a chunk of ice fell and hit it in the right way where it was bye-bye lens. So, not only myself, my equipment, but my friends. And so there's a lot going on.
Absolutely. And I was like, and then ice, sometimes you're in high elevation areas. There's just so many more factors that there's just so many factors. All right. So how was it coming home after this experience? Like, how did you feel?
Well, actually, after this trip, I went directly to Utah. So from one ice trip to the next ice trip.
All right. Okay. Now tell us about your back-to-back experience.
Yeah, so right after Utah, I flew out to, or I'm sorry, right after Minnesota, I flew out to Utah where I met up with my friend and mentor, Nikki Smith, as well as a good friend, Liz. And she is someone who's been ice climbing for quite a while. She's one of the first people I went ice climbing with the first season I went ice climbing. And so both of them like just super excel in ice climbing. So I was super stoked to be out there with them out in Maple Canyon, Utah, learning from them and also have this opportunity to shoot in a unique place because one thing that folks don't realize is that the ice doesn't always come in Maple. So it was a pretty rare opportunity to get some of these shots.
That's beautiful. And so I'd love for you to talk. Can you dive in a little bit more on the people? Because you're with some really badass folks.
Yeah, so my friend Liz, or should I say Dr. Liz, she just defended last week and now she is a doctor of neuroscience. So I just want to hype her up there that not only is she a badass Latina climber, but she is also just at the top of her profession as well. So go Dr. Liz. She helped coordinate this past season, the first ever what is called an all in Ice Fest, which was an inclusive to historically marginalized folks ice climbing festival. They met up in Utah. So she is I believe the festival founder and president, if you will. And so she's really, she's also someone who's really high up in her knowledge of climbing and is going for her, climbing certs and whatnot. And she's able to bring folks together to create this space for everyone who kind of want to see more people like them in the sport. So that's a little bit more on Liz. And then my favorite, well, not my favorite, I shouldn't say that. They're all my favorites. But Nikki Smith is someone who wrote the ice climbing book for Utah, Beehive Ice. And it was, it was something that in the moment I'm like, this is cool. But later on, I was like, that was really cool that not only did I go ice climbing with her, but like she has such an immense and profoundly deep knowledge of pretty much everything that's out there in Utah. She talks about it like I talk about food. Like she just knows what's going on, when, where, all the things. And she wrote the ice climbing book. She is an amazing photographer, amazing athlete, and just being there on the ground with her to shoot was amazing because she was able to give me so many pointers. And I'll be able to show you in a little bit some of the shots that I was able to take were thanks to her because the other photos in Minnesota, I concentrated on being on a static line. And she really has, during this trip in Utah and just in general, she really pushes me to push my boundaries and my comfort level a little bit in a good way and really seek out new perspectives to photograph the same thing in just a really non-traditional way, or in a way that just adds value to something that people have seen many times before.
Okay, amazing. That's so amazing. That's so amazing to hear that not only are you going out with people who are badass, they're mentors, they're part of your community, and they're also people who are, how do you say? I don't want to lightly use the word legend, but really.
She's a legend. She has a whole guidebook.
Like she this is totally aside. Nikki Smith gave me rigging equipment to get started. Yeah. Like that's how, so you're going out with people that are generous and that are helping you build that confidence. And I think that's really amazing that this was able to be captured in your experience. Let's talk about these Utah pictures. Let's get into it. So there's the very first picture that I'm looking at. I'd love to hear more about your process and your experience.
So we just kind of followed where the good ice was at. And by good ice, I mean the ice doesn't come every year. So it was kind of like it's now or never, or maybe in a couple of years. So this was the first climb that Liz hopped on. And with Nikki's encouragement, she got me to kind of get under Liz. And so what people don't realize is the crampons, which are the gear that are on her feet, they're really, really, really sharp. That's why they go in the ice. And so I had to be very quick and get under and get this top-down photo so that not only can you see her from, you know, the top down, but also some of the ice. You can see some of the ice that is chandeliering above her, which really makes for an interesting shot. And so I was able to get this really quickly with Nikki's encouragement.
Amazing. Okay, moving to the next one. This one's really incredible. I'd love to hear about it.
So this is the same ice climb, just from a different perspective where you can get a little more of the canyon, which I wanted to highlight because it was a sunny day. It was really beautiful. And so illuminated the canyon in a really lovely way where you can see the yellow tones in it and how that kind of just sandy structure juxtaposed this like glazed look of the ice. Nikki was in front of me, just kind of flicking. She was belaying Liz, who's on the climb. And she just started flicking the rope and she's like, try to get a shot of that. She was just like, just try to get a shot of that. And so that's what I did. I just stood next to her and tried to get the best angle. And that's how this photo was produced or created. Yeah.
Amazing. So for me, when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing like the elements. It's just so interesting because it looks like you're really tucked into this canyon. Like, was that something that was newer for you, being kind of so enveloped? Usually you kind of see ice kind of less than a tight space.
Yeah, this was the first time for me going into a kind of like a slot canyon, if you will. And so it was different. But I'm really happy I'm happy with the shots that we were able to create and just also bring to life the area we were in, and not just like, here's Liz and she's on ice. It's like, here's the land that she's on as well. And just being like, isn't this awesome, and celebrating it, because, you know, unfortunately, just due to how things are going with climate change, this ice might not come again for quite some time. So,
and I think that's also pretty amazing to acknowledge. Like, I feel like so many times when people see adventure photography, they're not realizing this is like a geologic time capture of what was here. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that you were really able to highlight with this project. So the next photo, it's a little more zoomed in. I'd love to hear about it.
So for this last photo, we went out of the canyon, and as you can probably tell from the image, this climb is right on the side of the road, super accessible. We just did a quick little stream crossing, and with Nikki's help, I was able to get set up with a static line up there. I waited for Liz to climb up, and in this moment, I really love it because it captures that moment of just like crushing the ice, hitting it. You can see some of the ice chunks kind of flying at her, and she's closing her eyes and trying to be cool as possible, looking so awesome. And at the same time, you can see that she's getting ready to step up. Her knee is like in a position to just kind of get ready to top out and meet me up there. And you can also tell the ice is thinning out there. So she's near the end, and it's just this wonderful moment of like, we did it. We're both up here. Awesome. And yeah.
I really love this photo because I think it shows, I like the texture on both sides, and just being able to, like, you're shooting down in this downward angle. And that kind of gets to another thing I want to talk about this grant. For me, I really didn't have access to equipment. And I think that was one of the things that we really wanted to think through, is being able to provide the right equipment and making sure that anyone that wins this feels like that they can go out and do the project of their dreams. I was curious to hear about how the equipment was helpful. Like, we know we have gave the grant funds, but just the equipment from the various sponsors.
Yeah, so as mentioned or a little bit already, it was really cold in some of these places, even though Utah was a lot warmer. It was 32 degrees, not negative 30 degrees. So, but regardless, having the Smart Wool be one of the sponsors keeping me warm. Shout out Smart Wool, as well as Marmot. Thanks, Marmot, for all the gear that I was able to wear and stay nice and dry and warm during these long shoots, because I was up there for hours at a time. And, being able to be comfortable and take these photos in a way that really captures what I was after when I originally proposed that grant really made a difference. The camera was a Sony camera. Thanks, Sony, for being able to hook your girl up, as well as Peak Designs with all the things to protect my gear as best as possible, even though the elements at some point did get to one of my lenses, but overall, everything made it safely back home. And being able to take a photo like this, it takes a village to support, an idea like this. And so I'm really thankful to all the sponsors, and I'm really happy with how things turned out.
So Janelle, you are also the recipient of the Bronco. How did that help during your project period?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much to Ford for loaning me out a Bronco during that time period. I went through a huge life transition, so having the Bronco really helped out. Not only personally, but also professionally. I was able to go out and explore these new places around me where I live, as well as other places that I've been able to visit for the first time ever, which helped kind of inspire me for locations for next time when I continue doing working on this project. And so having the Bronco was real clutch. Thank you so much again, Ford.
That makes me so happy to hear, because that was like the whole reason like I wanted to do this grant, was not only to make sure that people felt great, that people felt like they can come away with a commercial kit where they can go do this. And so like, as we're starting to wrap up, I kind of want to get to that. Like, how did you feel? How are you feeling now that you're not at the end of the road of this project? I feel like you got like the first chapter done. How are you feeling now that the grant period is ended? And what advice would you give to any people that are aspiring to do what you're doing?
That's a really great question. And I'll be completely honest. There was a lot of points during this grant period where I was feeling defeated, honestly, just due to COVID and traveling restrictions, as well as testing restrictions. There was a lot of other things that happened that unfortunately didn't make it onto this portion of the project, because I don't feel that they're ready to be added in just yet. I also went to Mexico and Guatemala, which was a lovely experience, and I got a lot of great photos, but they just kind of didn't quite flow just yet with the bigger picture that I had in mind. Because I highlighted Latinx women in this project, I also wanted to show, our homelands, and how even though it's not always associated, these Mexico and Central America and other Latin American countries aren't associated with ice and snow sports and whatnot. The land down there has a lot to offer that translates to why we do the things that we do now. My family comes from a mountainous region of Guatemala, and it makes sense that I gravitate towards the mountains. And so that was a portion of the project that I wanted to include, but it's not yet ready. And so for me, this is going to be a longer project that I hope to continue building up on. And for other folks out there who are wanting to get into outdoor photography or want to see more folks like themselves out there, I can really recommend just honoring yourself in all opportunities and just going out after every opportunity. I honestly applied for this grant I think on the very last day that it was open, because I thought I would be an imposter applying for this project. I was like, there's no way I can get it. Like, yeah, I know a little bit about this and a little bit about that, but maybe there's someone out there who needs it more, deserves it more, has a better developed project or proposal. And it really took a little bit of my husband kicking my butt to apply, and also friends, one of my best friends checking in on me and be like, do it, just what are they going to say? No, okay, like then it's a no. But what I really learned from this grant, receiving this grant, is don't be the one to tell yourself no. Make that someone else's job. Put yourself out there. Go learn the things that you want to learn in order to get to the point where you're doing these kinds of things, and just follow where opportunities may lead you. So I know that's kind of a very vague and general thing, but I think it's a big idea that a lot of people miss out on because they are the first ones to tell themselves no.
I think that lets us end on a beautiful message. I couldn't be more kind of humbled and inspired by the project that you have. And I'm so glad that you were a recipient. When we built this grant, you're exactly the type of person we were hoping that would apply. Someone that has some experience, that has the knowledge, but is ready to try to move to the next level with their talent. And through their skill, through their portfolio, you've demonstrated so many beautiful things that I hope that you can leave feeling invigorated, that you did something that's beautiful, and that this is only a part of the Janelle journey that we hope to see way more of.
I think that invigorated term is the perfect word, because again, like I said, COVID and a lot of things, made me feel like that I didn't quite contribute or put out there what I wanted to. But it is what it is. Like, I got COVID. Two of my friends during this project got COVID. Like, this is what I was able to do given the time and all the other limitations. And again, this isn't the end of my project. This is just a really solid foundation that I hope to keep building up on. And I'm really excited to keep sharing as I keep building in the years to come. So thank you so much to Marmot, to you, to everyone involved who gave me the support and encouragement to just really say yes to myself and these opportunities. And hopefully a lot of folks who see this will be able to tell themselves, yes, I can try this sport. Yes, I can go out there and photograph. Yes, like, let me find some folks online. Like, it's just the world we live in. And sometimes those are the people that end up being part of your crew. And, you can build these wonderful opportunities and memories. And I hope that translates into my photos and that people will be able to take that part with them after viewing it.
I love it. And I think that's an amazing message. I hope everyone, especially people of color, continue to take up space.